So who didn't want this award? How'd I get it? That's my first question. I'm honored to be here. Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me and my wife, Melissa Hudson Bell, who's right here in the front. I have to be honest, when I was told I was winning this award and I saw the list of people who had won it before, I really did have a feeling of like, what? I understand that, certainly we do hard work in the work we do, but when I saw the list of people who'd won it before me, I certainly thought, did Van Jones say no? I don't know, But it's quite an honor and overwhelming to be in a room like this. Thank you to Bianca. Thank you for that beautiful intro. I really appreciate that. Round of applause, everybody. Oh, I got to start my timer. They told me 10 minutes, and I don't know how long 10 minutes is. Okay, all right. And I took some notes because I don't remember how to talk since COVID. All right, here we go. But also, thank you to Barbara for hosting this. Please, it's wonderful to sit with you at the table. Oh, there you are. Thank you. And Glide, that was amazing. Lift every voice and sing. That's why I love San Francisco. That's a very old school San Francisco thing, Glide Memorial Church, and also white people knowing the second verse of Lift Every Voice and Sing. We got to keep that energy in San Francisco, because even I was up there like, oh, I don't know the second verse of Lift Every Voice and Sing. When you're reading the lips of a white guy doing it, you know you're, It's like, I love it. I always think whenever we talk about Martin Luther King Jr., it always occurs to me to think about the fact that he could still be alive. He should be alive. Thank you. Thank you for fact checking me. I appreciate that. No, he would be 95 years old. His birthday was last month. He'd be 95 years old in a month if he was still here. Because I think a lot of times, especially when we talk to kids about MLK and the images are in black and white, we think of him from being from something like 100 or 1,000 years ago. But this is a man, by all rights, could still be here and be walking the earth and see what had come of his work and what hadn't. And that's the part I think about. What hasn't happened that he was hoping for, and what can we do about that? Ironically, like I said, I really do appreciate this award, but I got to be honest, I was just a black kid who wanted to be like Eddie Murphy on Saturday Night Live. That's all I wanted to be, was like Eddie Murphy on Saturday Night Live. That's why I got into stand-up comedy. I moved out to the Bay Area in '97, thought I'd be here for 2 or 3 years to move down to LA and get that LA thing going. Still here, we're still here. I think it's my mom's fault. I blame my mom. My mom's 86 years old. She is still on this planet walking around. She's with our daughters right now at our house. She's gonna be mad when I tell her I won this award and she wasn't here. I'll deal with it. Don't worry about it. But I grew up in one of those households where Happy Black History Month, but in our house, Black History Month was every month. We talked about Black History Month in September, January. We talked early. There was just a wallpaper of Black history and Black conversations in our house all the time. So while I was a kid who wanted to be a comedian, I also heard talks about the struggle, and my mom is 86, so she basically saw every part of the Black struggle except for slavery. That's meant to be funny. Don't feel bad. She's from Indianapolis. It's basically true. So I just heard about the struggle for black people, but I was also raised at a time in the 70s, 80s where we thought this was a past conversation. I used to joke in my act that I was 11 years old before I realized that a cracker was also a delicious snack. That joke's not for everybody. It's all right. It's all right. Some people have to Google that later. It's totally cool. Actually, our daughter Sammy, our oldest daughter Sammy, is like, "What does that mean, Dada?" Well, you'll wait. I'll tell you later. You got to be a little older. So I just had this sense that part of being black was the job that you wanted to do and the job you had to do as a black person in this country to make sure it was easier for the next wave of black people behind you. I always thought about it as a baton. So my mom was born in 1937, and she always talked about her father and how her father had 3 jobs. He worked at a meatpacking plant. He also worked he was a carpenter occasionally, and then he worked on the weekends taking the poor cuts of meat they didn't want to sell to the white folks, and he would sell them to the black folks. You always got to have a hustle. And then he also was a community leader, which didn't pay anything, but he knew he had to be a community leader because he was an upwardly mobile black person who was working and wanted to make sure that he could create opportunities for other black people. I didn't think about that when I was growing up. I just thought that's what he did. But I know that when my grandfather and grandmother handed my mom the black baton, that it was lighter than when they got it. And when my mom handed it to me, it was lighter than when she got it. And now I sit here with our 3 daughters, 12, 9, and 5, thinking about when I hand them the baton, I'm not sure it's going to be lighter. And I think about that every day. And even though the work I do, I want it to be comedic and I want it to be funny, and I think about it all the time, and again, I just wanted to be a comedian, it's a lot different than I expected it would be. It's a lot harder than I expected it would be. It's not as much fun as I thought it would be. But then I have to step back and realize I chose this. I didn't have to do this. My mom always said, you could just be a funny comedian. You don't have to do all this stuff. Which I don't know if that's his way of saying I need to be funnier. I'm not sure what that means. But my mom, I just felt like this is what I have to do. And I have to be honest, whenever I get caught up in that, I don't talk about this out loud in front of people a lot because it sounds like a comedian talking about how hard it is to be a comedian. I get that. And whenever I even do that by myself, suddenly the ghost of Harriet Tubman shows up and goes, oh, is it hard to be a comedian? First of all, what's a comedian? Oh, you work indoors. Okay, you're already ahead of me. So it's important to keep perspective, while it's also important to say this is a hard challenge. I moved to the Bay Area in '97, as I said. I used to go, all I wanted to do in this area of town was to get on stage at the Punchline, which is about a 10-minute walk from here. Punchline Comedy Club gave me my first stage time when I moved to the Bay Area. I really grew up in that club and grew up as a comedian in that club. But then because I'm a weirdo, I lived in Oakland and had a day job in Berkeley. And a lot of my social circle was like what we call the dregs of society. Punk rockers, anarchists, and ethnic studies majors. And so I found myself in conversations in Berkeley and Oakland that I wasn't having at the stand-up comedy clubs. And I would go to the stand-up comedy clubs and try to work that stuff into the comedy clubs, and it did not work. But I was learning so much. I mean, I moved here from Chicago in '97. Berkeley immediately blew my Midwestern mind. I mean, it was the bar for blowing my mind was very low at that point. I was like, vegan cheese? But all the conversations I started to have with people, all the conversations I overheard, all the rooms I was in where I was the only person like me, I learned very quickly the value of something I like to call shutting the fuck up and listening. The value of sorry for not allowing us, Barbara, is that too much? I'm sorry, okay. Thank you. I won't say that's the last swear word. But like the value of like being a person who's in a room surrounded by people with a different perspective from you. And there's that thing, especially as a comedian, as an American, that I learned very quickly, if I shut up and listen, I would learn a lot more. And then I would be a lot more interesting when I talk to other people about what I learned in that room. And that's the skill that I took from that room, from conversations with my friends, from a woman I met who was named Melissa Hudson at that point. And we had conversations about racism versus feminism. It was good. It was how we courted. It's a very Bay Area. It's very Susan B. Anthony and Frederick Douglass, but hotter. That was probably too far, Barbara. That was probably too far. I'm not even looking at my notes. I should go back to the notes. But I took that skill to a show called United Shades of America on CNN for 7 seasons. And from the very first episode, when I met with the Ku Klux Klan, I realized that I was in over my head, and this was not going to be the thing that I thought it was going to be. And I also realized from that very first season, there's not enough black people working on this show. I'm the only one. And so the story of that show is 2 stories. It's the story of what happened on screen and the story of what happened off screen. And I think you all in this room know it's not just about the work you're doing, it's about who you're doing the work with. and making sure that you're all on the same page and making sure that you're surrounded by people who are smarter than you sometimes in different areas so you can all pull forward in the right direction. And the first season, I felt like I was the only one who actually cared about what was happening on the show. To the producer of the show, I was just the one piece of set equipment that could talk. And so that first season, which I did, that first episode, I talked to the Ku Klux Klan. And I learned that the Ku Klux Klan thought that interracial marriage was worse than murder. That's fun. But I also got to go to San Quentin prison and meet some of the men there. And even though I was scared of going into a prison, I'd never been in prison before, I got to learn about all the incredible rehab programs there and how we have done, that this country's done such a good job of bragging about how many people we lock up. We don't think about all the incredible intelligence and resources we lose from our country by locking all those people up. One of those people who was the co-host of that episode with me, Rasan Thomas, I stayed in touch with, and he got out of prison about a year ago. I spoke at one of his hearings. He had a lot of people to speak. He didn't need me. And it was one of the great experiences of my life to see him outside of San Quentin on Piedmont Avenue in Oakland and take him to ramen for his very first ramen meal. That was, but I learned a lot on that show. That show was an education for me. And I knew eventually that show wasn't even about me hosting. It was about me experiencing and me being in conversation and forgetting that the cameras were there. We did an episode about black trans women in Texas. And when I asked one of the black trans women, what can heterosexual cisgender black men do better to support you? She said, I don't know, you tell me. I thought I was the host. I learned about unhoused people when we did an episode on Skid Row in LA, and I learned that most of homelessness is economic. I talked to Arabs and Muslims in Dearborn, Michigan, right after Trump was elected, and I found out how afraid they were about what was to come. And then shortly after that, I learned that they were right to be afraid. And I was so happy to see some of my favorite lawyers from the ACLU down there at all the airports when Trump did the Muslim ban. So thank you, lawyers. I'm sure some of you were there in this room. I learned from Kat Brooks of the Anti-Police Terror Project in Oakland about defund the police and why that is not such a scary term. And now, United Chase is over, but I've gotten all that knowledge, but I'm also old. But I'm really proud to live in this place, to have gotten all that knowledge, to have soaked up all that knowledge, and to really understand that, like, my jobs that I thought were two separate jobs, being a comedian and being concerned for my people, are one job that I can do all at one time. And so, even though it blows me away to be getting this award, and I can't imagine what the conversation was like, it is really important for me to be able to take this award home tonight and show it to our three daughters. Our oldest daughter, Sammy, is a singer, and she has become the standard bearer of Lift Every Voice and Sing at her school. So I'm going to play her a clip of what she did to be like, look what these people are doing. They know the second verse. It's my fault she doesn't. It's my fault. I'm going to show our middle kid, Juno, who yesterday wrote a poem and performed it at her school with her classmates. Everybody picked subjects to perform, and she decided that her poem was going to be about Angela Davis. Yeah. So I'm going to show it to her and see that I'm doing the work you're doing. And I'm happy to see them pick up that baton even before it's their time, but I'm really committed and interested in that baton being much lighter when I hand it to them. And I know that that's not just going to happen by chance or happenstance. It's going to happen if I do the work. If me and Melissa do the work, which we do the work. If everybody in this room does the work. If we recognize our privilege and know that there's people who want to be in this room but can't be in this room or don't even know this room exists. And we work with people outside of this room so that next year there's twice as many people in this room doing the work. And I think, and we have to do the work, whether we're uncomfortable, whether we're mad, sad, glad, tired, whatever it is, the work has to get done because, I don't know, the future of the planet is at stake. Doesn't mean we always have to agree. Doesn't mean that we always have to be completely unified on every issue, but we do have to be willing to dig down deep and talk and figure out what the assignment is. And I know you folks all know what the assignment is. Thank you for having me. Thank you for this award. I really appreciated it. And as hard as it's been to be up here right now, the ghost of Harriet Tubman's like, oh, it's hard to give a speech to lawyers? It's hard. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.